started, shall we? Hello. How's everybody doing? How's things? How's life? How's yours? How has your week been? Hello to John if you're still sticking around, and hello to Ish. How you guys doing? Let me close Thunderbird before it makes a noise, hopefully. Yeah. Hello John. How you man? How you doing, man? How's things? On. How should I? Should uh, I'm unfortunately back to the position where I'm in lots of pain and discomfort, so yeah, keeping busy as always. In fact, I bought a PCIe 8-pin connector, and the pins are in here for the bed cooler project, because I have redesigned the PCB for this, and instead of having all of the thermoelectric coolers just soldered separately, it's just going to be a PCIe 8-pin header, which is that one. So I stick this on the text, and then I can still remove it, plug it in, remove it. Same with the fans. The fans have their own little headers, 2-pin headers for that. It's mostly the same. Like, the reason that there should be 5 MOSFETs here, this one controls the fans, which is these current limiting resistors, and then the fans themselves, and the 4 that should be here act as basically a way to connect voltage either, like one side or the other way, basically to be able to reverse which way the techs are connected, then be able to have them do cooling or heating, or cooling the water or heating the water. So yeah, I also ordered the foam for the mattress topper from a local foam company, and I've got the new tubing, which is a lot thinner than the original cap. It's 4mm ID tubing, 5mm outer. I've just thrown like a mile of it on the floor, so that's good. But yeah, that will be what's going in. It should keep him busy. I'm kind of lost at the moment. Lost as in physically or mentally? What's up? Nice. It's getting too hot. Mentally. Also, hello Simon. Hello Jim. How you guys doing? How's things? You want to talk about it, John? Need a bed first. Don't ask. I mean, that kind of sounds important. You okay, bro? Yeah. But yeah, the bed cooler project is on its way. I need to order the new PCBs, and also the new latency tool PCBs. That I've been harping on about for weeks. Although I'm waiting on the op amps, which are, where is it? That op amp, which is a ST TSV 7721, to arrive at the old JLC PCB factory. But yeah. There's a whole new PCB. Yes, there's several actually. Misty, hello. How you doing? Hello Simon S63. How you doing? Hello Joe. How you doing, man? How disappointed are you with the new Ryzen CPUs and related opinions on the new Ryzen stuff? So I don't have any of the new Ryzen parts. I was told that I was on the list. Apparently I'm not. Um, Although actually, I mean, I have to assume that, uh, yeah, yeah, okay. Well, anyway, so I don't have any first-hand experience with it, so, you know, grain of salt. Um, I'm on a list, I'm on a lot of lists. From what I've seen so far, they look anywhere between fine and meh. It's kind of hard to argue that they won't be a decent choice because insert picture of a dumpster fire with an Intel logo over it. Um, yeah, the fact that they're not, at least the 7 and the 6 don't seem to be considerably faster than their last gen parts. Um, is kind of surprising and kind of not. Um, because this is the first, like, this feels where Zen 5, from what we've seen so far, seems like Zen 4 Plus at best. Although the power efficiency does seem to be a pretty big deal, and it looks like if you do, I say overclock, use PBO to set them to a higher power target, then you end up with much more of class-leading performance, let's say. Of course, the fact that the X3D CPUs exist at all kind of really means that for the sorts of people who are interested in actually buying a CPU on its own, like not just as part of a Dell or HP system, or who are like using a system integrator and just higher number better, you probably want the X3D one, which obviously we don't know when those will be available, but you know, when they are available, that will likely be the next go-to chip. With that said, the fact that these sit in the same socket kind of means that it doesn't really matter which one you buy. Like, let's say you were gonna buy or you were thinking of buying the 9600 and 9700X. Well, there's not that much of a problem buying the 7600 or the 7700X or the X3Ds now, and then, you know, in a couple years time when the 10600X 3D is available, swap that one in, because they're going to be in the same socket, and as long as you get BIOS updates, who cares? Which is kind of, it's the nice thing about AMD's platform thus far, has been that socket longevity and the interoperability, which obviously Intel has never offered by comparison. And even like AMD committing to support AM5, like that socket, until 2027 now. You know, like, buy any of the AM5 CPUs now, and in a couple years time buy a new CPU, and hey look, it still fits in your motherboard. Hey look, it still uses the same RAM. Hey look, it still uses the same cooler. You know? Kinda nice. Where am I at? Is the X3D die stacked with more cache? Yes. Was there thermal issues with that, or am I misremembering? I seem to remember, I think the earlier ones, yes. They are, technically speaking, by stacking the dies, especially with the cache on top rather than cache underneath. Which I understand why they do that. All of the connections are on the bottom of the chip, so if you put the cache underneath, all of the chip connections and chip interconnections would have to happen through the cache, which adds physical distance, therefore latency, and just a lot of other problems and difficulties. So, you know, that. But also it means for heat dissipation, yeah, it's kind of a problem. But I don't think that it's that big a deal, especially on this AM5 generation. My 2 cents. It seems the new Ryzens are quite faster. They just turn off PBO because they're afraid of pulling an incel. The power limit, or the fact that the efficiency is higher, is definitely the sort of the key talking point, of the launches thus far. But it does also look like if you are going to, let's say, push them for a bit more performance, there looks to be a bit of headroom, and B, a bit of performance on tap still, which is kind of nice. Yeah. I kind of like the idea of you, the user, being the one to sort of unlock its full potential. There's something kind of tickles the part of your brain like you did that, you know? I'm not saying that AMD shouldn't just make the best chip that they can, but there's definitely a bit of an allure to the product that you can make better. Like, one of the reasons why I bought my Audi S4 is that it only takes a software update to go from 330 horsepower to 420, and then you change a pulley, or two pulleys, and you get 500. You know, like, that ability to make it a lot better. There's a certain draw to that. 9600 is a waste of cash, as a 7800 X3D kills it, and it's around the same price. I haven't looked at pricing, but if that's the case, then yeah, buy the 7800 X3D. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for supporting Amazon, and therefore me. Ba, 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 ba. Hello, Chris, and hello, Essentialist, and no. Did I miss anything? Did I miss anyone? I don't think so. Ba, 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 ba. I don't know if I actually answered Joe. How am I doing? Not great. Starting the big MSI monitor review tomorrow. Also gonna be first time trying to work out OS LTC. You'll probably want RTT for that one. Need to do some reading how to use them properly. Well, it's mostly just download the software, plug them in, kind of press go. Yeah. You will for monitor reviews. I was gonna hold up this one because this is a response time tool. It's not your response time tool, and it's not out yet. But the response time tool is the one that you want for monitor reviews, for peripherals, for audio devices, for game controllers and games, and anything latency that isn't just a monitor on its own. The latency tool is what you're after. Yeah. Any thoughts about the Half-Life 3 rumors? I did see that. What was the code name? Anyway, Valve's hiring people for a code name that looks an awful lot to be like a new Half-Life game, which would be interesting. I was definitely in the laughing at Valve and Gaben, you know, not being able to count to 3 camp. Although I would add that while I have played Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and Episode 2 and a bit of Half-Life the original, I can't I would say that Portal is my more favorite of the Valve games. I've actually played Half-Life Alyx as well on the Index. But yeah, I'm more of a fan of Portal than Half-Life, so I would be more interested in a Portal 3 personally. Uh, Intel crashing and burning, they will recover rights. We need them to keep AMD innovating, keep prices competitive. Um, yes, they are. Uh, they likely will. I do hope that they do. Realistically, the what you call it? The Intel situation is a complicated one. Both from the current like CPUs exploding problem, although not literally like AMD's ones were for a bit, but the that situation is kind of complicated and somewhat interesting because they they clearly know A, what the problem is, and B, are basically really just trying to limit their liability, which I think is the wrong move, because if they treat people well, if they take the hit and say, yeah, no, we messed this up, let's actually make it right for everybody. One, I don't think you get class action lawsuits, or the deal with fighting them is easier, because you say, look, we acknowledge the fault and we tried, like, here are all of the actions we did to make it right. You can't really, what damages do you want? We tried, but it obviously hurts your brand reputation and the trust in your brand, because when even in the enthusiast circles, like, AMD GPUs being unstable stuck around for a long time, and I'm pretty sure had a decent effect on AMD sales, because they keep launching initiatives and keep saying, oh no, they're stable, it's great, no, we have all these stability things and blah 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 blah. But yeah, so the dumpster fire that is the current situation is an problem, but there is clearly a larger problem. Like, the fact that they had an oxidation issue that they let slip for up to 2 years, that's a problem, and that they didn't catch. And then, like, the fact that they're moving from their own fabs to using TSMC for their new chips is a pretty big, like, some colored flag, you know? And then obviously the elephant in the room is the 15 to 20,000 people that they're laying off. That is that's a big deal. One, for those people involved, because, like, losing your job, especially en masse like that, is bad. But even for Intel as a company, the amount of knowledge that will be leaving them is significant. And that has a knock-on effect to all of the products that they produce down the line. And that's the thing that is hard to recover from. Like, if you're firing people who are potentially the only people in your company that know how a certain thing works, or how your processes work, or how to do a certain thing, or how to achieve the goals you're going for, that's knowledge that at best takes years to recover from, and at worst is just gone for you for good. So yeah, it's definitely, I would say, dark days for Intel. I think they're also in the too big to fail camp, in the sense that, much like Boeing, even if they do continue making a series of bad decisions that lead them to not having much money anymore, I'm pretty sure Uncle Sam's bailing them out, and almost as always, with very little conditions. If I understand right, Pat Gelsinger pumped his salary up by 45%, I think, while laying off 15,000 people and, you know, getting rid of the free, like, food and snacks and fruit from the lunchroom. Because what you really need is to, like, fire 15,000 people, and then also, for the remaining few, take away the really monetarily inconsequential things that give them at least a little bit of, like, morale, a bit of a reason to try hard and you know, at work, and really put the effort in. What you really need to do is get rid of all of those things, and then just, like, make them work extra hard for less money. Yeah, that always works out. So yeah. Before Ryzen, Intel were the IBM. Remember them? They used to be relevant. Never used to be fired for buying IBM. Yes, yeah. I mean, now look at IBM. They don't own their own fabs, and they really only make data center products. Actually, kind of niche data center products too. I know. I went to one of their offices. It was really cool. Who needs people? Intel have AI. No, they don't. Dell also dumped a load of talent. Big tech can be cray-cray, and smaller studios popping up to start stealing their lunch money. Well, yeah, but a lot of the bigger companies do a Google, which is really an antitrust, as we found out this week. And they buy up companies, or they buy out companies that are potentially threatening to their business model, and then quietly make them go away once they've got a controlling seat in the board, or, you know, bought them out, invested in them, whatever. So yeah. And John is mad at the terminology, and Jim is joking, which I know. I think John also knows. It's just also the phrase has taken on a non-etymological meaning. Is that the right phrase? And John's mad about that. I kind of am too, but also there's lots of stupid phrases like that. So all the problems Intel had to get 10 nanometer working was they needed more manpower, but the penny pinchers were happy to keep breaking it in from the lack of competition instead of spending it on talents. Yeah, I mean, the fact that 10 nanometer, which is Intel 7, didn't work for like a decade, while people like TSMC have been... I mean, okay, no. The fact that Intel is a, like, major shareholder of ASML, the people who make lithography machines, the fact that Intel has been a major shareholder for ASML for decades and did not buy EUV, extreme ultraviolet lithography machines, until, like, last year, when they started moving to Intel 4, which is the first EUV process node. Like, TSMC has had EUV machines for, I think, a decade now. They've been it has taken some time for TSMC to make it work, but I think they started with N7 was their first EUV node, and I think that was what Ryzen launched on as well, wasn't it? Anyway, I think it was because I think they had these AMD still had a deal with Global Foundries, and so they were using Global Foundries 14 nanometer for the IO die, if I remember rightly. But then the magic of AMD's chiplet design is that they can have the IO die be one process node, and they can have the core die or core dies be another. Anyway, yeah, like TSMC has had EUV machines for a decade or more, and Intel has only bought them very recently, despite Intel being one of the co-owners of ASML. Yeah, like that is just insane to me. It is really quite funny that Intel had rested on its laurels for so long that they really like they didn't even buy EUV machines. You know, like they were so dead set on not spending more money on progressing their company, and instead spent it on stock buybacks and, you know, executive pay, that they let progress slip through their fingers. TSMC buys machines, Intel profit from that, and then give everybody else what they can produce. Complacent. Kind of, yeah. I mean, the amount of profit that Intel will receive from being a co-owner of ASML is, I think, pretty minimal. You know, like really not much. Compared to, like, because TSMC is only buying handfuls of machines at most, and yeah, they're like multi-million-dollar machines, but like the cost of building the machine is multi-million-dollars because they are insane machines. So yeah, crazy. Ryzen launched 7 years ago. Yeah, 2017? Because I went to Austin. I went to AMD's headquarters in Austin. And yeah. Also, apologies if he's blasting you with messages. But nice. Glad you got it working, Joe. I mean, it is. I specifically designed it to be pretty simple, so yeah. I'm glad that it's working these. Intel's actions are like digging a well during a drought once you're thirsty. Yeah. That is partially r/I'm 14, this is deep, but also it's actually a great analogy. It does feel very much like Intel is let's say on the back foot, and also, yeah, pushing rather hard with I get the hybrid architecture is a very interesting concept to me. One, because I don't really like hybrid stuff, because a lot of the time being a hybrid is to be compromising in various ways, and sometimes that hybridness does end up being beneficial in enough ways. So, for example, I don't really like hybrid vehicles where the you still have an internal combustion engine that just drives the wheels as normal, but then you also happen to have an electric motor that can sort of help the engine along a bit, basically, right? Whereas if you have a full electric drive, some battery, but then also perhaps an internal combustion engine or whatever, that is a lot more of an appealing concept to me, because you're getting all of the efficiency benefits of just a fully electric vehicle. You know, the electric drive is 95% efficient, whatever, so that's great. And then also the energy source that charges those batteries that then drive the motor is essentially source agnostic. You can put a diesel engine there, you can put a petrol engine there, you can do what Mazda's doing and put I think one rotor, like Wankel rotary engine as a generator. And also, even if you are going to use some form of internal combustion engine, then you can have the efficiency of just running at peak efficient RPM, rather than what you do in your standard combustion engine where you're running through the rev range. That's a lot less efficient. Anyway, that's an example of a hybrid architecture that I don't mind. The CPU architecture adds a lot of complexity, especially the Core Ultra 7 155H that I'm reviewing in an Acer Triton Neo 16 right now. That has 3 different types of cores in it: the low power Island E cores and the SoC tile, the E cores and the P cores, both on the compute tile. And that adds a lot of complexity, and while I can understand technically the efficiency benefits of having really low power cores where you don't really care about the performance, there needs to be an core active to run whatever you need. I like, especially on laptops and stuff, I get it. On desktops though, it seems like a very good way to say, look, we have efficiency. Just don't look at those other cores over there. Because if you compare AMD to NVIDIA, AMD to Intel in that regard, and even the 16 core is what, 170 watts at most, compared to 253 watts. Core Active may I introduce you to AMD Bulldozer. I bought a Bulldozer chip. And actually, what's kind of funny is a lot of people laugh at the FX 9590, the was it 5 gigahertz, like factory overclocked chip, basically. So the thing about AMD Bulldozer and IO Driver and Steamroller, I think the 3 generations. Was there a Bulldozer as well? Anyway, the thing with AMD's FX series is that while they were 8 cores, they had 8 integer units, but only 4 floating point units. And so there is an argument and a lawsuit that said the basically AMD were doing a fraud by saying that it was an 8 core when it only has 4 floating point units. And generally speaking, the description of a core is 1 int and 1 vector or floating point unit. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And the other interesting thing about the 9590 is that while it was very much renowned for being, well, as Ish says, hot and hungry, it actually wasn't. I mean, it was hot, especially for the time, especially because the coolers were shit. But it wasn't that power hungry. Those chips were not ridiculous by anything in the last like 5 generations of Intel standards. So yeah, that was fun. Some chips are still released in 2024 with 4 cores. Who even needs more than 4 cores? I mean, at this point, most people. But that's probably not quite true. Although saying that, Phones have had 8 cores for efficiency, for high power, for like 2 decades, a bit more, a bit less. Yeah, the human eye can't count more than 4 cores. Do you remember when that was a like legit thing that people were, you know, believed that you couldn't see more than 24 FPS? And then it was 30, and then it was 60. But no, there's a benefit to all of them. I mean, shit, there's a benefit to 1,000 FPS or 1,000 hertz if you can manage it on a display. It's mostly just a latency benefit, but also a smoothness benefit. Anyway, again, there's benefits to you know, the sooner stuff shows up on your screen. For example, in the latency department, the sooner an enemy shows up on your screen, even if you are slow, the sooner it shows up, the more time you have to react to it, especially if the other person has a slower setup. So there's still a benefit even if you are slow. Maybe one day, Jim. Qualcomm has a different problem. They're competent in the hardware design, but dumb as a doorstopper when it comes to drivers and software. Yeah. Well, it's funny because Qualcomm is also not a hardware company. Um, they, they don't fab their own stuff. It's all TSMC. So you would think that since they essentially are designing hardware in software, that they could help design the software better, but you know. Intel is still playing catch up to AMD. First gen Ryzen took them by surprise. Intel didn't know what hit them. Well, no, they very clearly didn't. Because there were still like, what was it, 4-core CPUs for a decade, like Core 2 quad to the 7700K. You know, Pentium 4. Well, or Pentium D, or was that dual core? There was a 4-core Pentium, wasn't there? Back in the day. Anyway, I think Ryzen had a lot of material benefits over Intel's design. The joke that the chips are glued together is a legit, like, major stepping stone, because it means that the IO, which is not as performance sensitive or you know, power sensitive, can be made on a different process node. And it means that you get smaller physical dies, so you can produce more of them with the same, out of a 12-inch wafer, you can only make so many chips. And the smaller you make that die, the more of them that you can fit on, and the more good ones you'll have, the better yield you'll get. And so AMD was basically able to go from, okay, let's make something that's that size, to let's make a bunch of things that are that size. We can now make 4 to every 1 chip that you could before. Well, you can now put 2 of them, or up to 2 of them, on a chip. So you're still making double, plus the yield rate goes up, plus you don't need to put the IO die, so you can buy a separate, cheaper wafer for the IO die on an older process node that has more availability. And so, yeah, that was an insanely beneficial design structure that Intel is only just now essentially copying with their tiles. Although they've also potentially changed that, because it's at least Lunar Lake is still I think a monolithic tile, maybe. Or is there a different tile? No, they've gone from an SoC tile and a compute tile to package tile and IO tile or something. But anyway, like, only just now, like in the last 1 to 2 years, has Intel finally essentially copied it. They're doing it slightly differently with their Foveros packaging method, which you could argue is a more advanced way to do it than just sticking the dies on the PCB substrate, because they're physically closer, they're linked with silicon interconnects. You can do logic and error correction in the silicon interconnect part. Like, there's lots of really cool stuff that you can do with that. But at the end of the day, it's still the same core idea. And AMD's had, 5 years to get ahead on that. And that's just one of the things. Obviously, they've had, I think, unarguably better access to lower end or higher end process nodes, lower sized process nodes through TSMC for years too. And so, they really are. AMD really is sort of ahead in a lot of fronts, and Intel's still playing catch up. And I mean, it very much looked like with the 13th and 13.5 gen, they kind of rushed it, because look what happened. Also, I have a potentially controversial thing to say about the microcode update that is supposedly going to fix the 13th and 14th gen degradation issue. Personally, I would wait until that BIOS update is out and we have confirmed testing to show that it fixes the issue before, let's say, changing your mind about those chips. Because this is not the first time they have released a BIOS upgrade and microcode update that supposedly fixes the instability issue. There is the oxidization issue that Gamers Nexus has reported on, and that Intel has now admitted is a thing, and it doesn't affect the stability. Oh no, it does affect the stability, but only a very small subsample. And we won't say the dates or many manufacturing codes. It's very small. We'll look after you. Just RMA your chip 15 times in a row when we keep telling you no, and then we'll claim that it's a fake, and then, we'll get to it. Yeah. I would wait for some thorough testing and confirmation before contemplating a 13th or 14th gen chip of your own, personally. A big difference between AMD and Intel is that Ryzen worked on Windows without major redesign of Windows, whereas Intel needed Windows to change how Windows worked. Yeah, I mean, why do you think we have Windows 11? Windows 10 was meant to be the last version of Windows. Which obviously it wasn't going to be, but Windows 11 really only launched because of 12th gen. It's why I think Windows 11 was so utterly muntered when it launched, and it took like a couple years to even be remotely stable. I think that points to Intel's hurriedness, to Microsoft's lack of QA team that they fired a few years ago, probably a decade ago now, and made the customers the QAs. Ryzen laptop CPUs have been the same for so long. We've got laptops all the time. Super same. Yes, I do wish the Ryzen laptop chips were a bit better. Still no way I'm using Windows 11. Way too many intrusive system ads, tracking, etc. Apparently they're disabled. They disabled the workaround for installing without an account. Yes, they did. They disabled basically all of the methods, including the one that I liked best, which was just typing test@test.com as the username, any password you wanted, and then it would say, something has gone wrong. Would you like to create a local account instead? So much easier than opening, command prompt, whatever. I think you can still. So I think if you immediately press Shift F10 to open the command prompt, and then disable the Wi-Fi adapter with NetSH, and then restart. No, and then do the bypass NRO thing. OB / bypass NRO, and then reboot, which I think it does for you. It will then, and only then, let you do it. With Rufus, that lets you make an automatic local account. Good point. I'm talking about laptops that have Windows 11 already installed, but that I need to set up to be able to benchmark them. Yeah, I can't use Rufus on those. As far as I'm aware, Tammy, I made it work. After all of the other things have been patched, and just using bypass NRO doesn't work anymore, but if you disable all your network adapters, it has to work, because what, they're going to force you to have internet to set up? Like, what if you genuinely don't have internet, but you've bought this PC? Are you just screwed until you can find a free public Wi-Fi like hotspot? No. I just switched to Linux. I was already halfway there. Don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. Google would force you. That's true, but it's Google. If I am ever forced off of Windows 10, I think I'll make Linux work. With how much Valve has done for Proton, like maybe a little bit of dual booting for games or something, I can deal with that. But for everyday use, if I'm forced off of Windows 10 for whatever reason, yeah. Well, that's what the dual booting's for, essentially. Dual boot, boot in, play games, restart. John, yes, it does. I agree, Sammy. I agree. No way. No way. I need to get around to playing with LTSC 111. That might be an option. But also, man. Ryzen needs a quick sync competitor. I hope, though, with the Xilinx merger, that helps build an accelerator on the SoC. Yeah, well, I mean, QuickSync just uses the iGPU and/or the media engine built onto the iGPU, right? AMD already has all of those things. I think it's potentially, especially with the new chips that have all the AM5 chips have iGPUs built in, if I remember rightly, or the majority of them do. And so, yeah, I suspect that it's more of a software thing rather than a lack of hardware thing, if that makes sense. Joe, I would love a reviewer option too. Oh my god. 1700 for a MacBook M3 Pro, 18 gig of RAM, 512 gig of storage, not too shabby. 18 gig of RAM when you have shared VRAM, especially with that high of a resolution display, isn't enough. especially if you do anything intensive, like you're a programmer of any kind, or do anything creative. Like 32 gigs is really the minimum, and 512 gig of storage. I guess it depends on what you're doing with it. Obviously, I'm somewhat biased in that my experience with laptops is really gaming laptops, and therefore, you don't have with gaming you have much higher space requirements because games are fucking massive now. So you know, but I'm sure that's not bad, especially if you need it. I think the crazy thing is that if you wanted 1 terabyte of storage, they'd charge you over £2,000 for the same laptop. Ba, ba, ba. Joe, yes, but that's what a Monopoly does. If I play Warzone 2 and I have Firefox on, sometimes it either crashes the game or Firefox because of RAM. You have 32 gigabytes of RAM. Interesting. Is that like a double allocation problem or something? That's kind of confusing. Also, Tame reaches 18 to 22 gigabytes of RAM usage if I have a couple of Chrome tabs open, 22 to 34 at a time. Nice. So I have 64 gig of RAM because I need it. It's video editing mostly. But for context, I apparently have 32 Chrome tabs open. I know that because Chrome loads an executable into every a Chrome tab into each executable, so I have 32 Chrome executables running. That means that I have 32 tabs open. Firefox, I think, doesn't fully isolate each tab into a thread, because I know that I have more than 14 tabs open. But there you go. And I'm currently using, while streaming, 24.4 gigabytes. If I sort by memory usage, Chrome's using 3.5 gig. Okay. Firefox using 1.6. Spotify, well, wait, hold on, what? Spotify is using 800 megabytes and 20% of my CPU. You what, bruv? I just closed it. Much better. Yeah. Streamlabs OBS is only using 450 meg. 10% of CPU though. I think I am. Well, hold on. I can't tell you. Oh no, I'm using NVENC. I'm not using H.264 or X.264. I do use slobs. Yes, that's how the chat's on screen. There you go. 25% video encode. No, not 2700. 32 tabs. Oh, Pelican says 2700. Right. Yeah. There is such a thing as a limit. And I feel like 2,400 tabs is over that. I feel like having 2,400 web browser tabs open at any one time may constitute a hoarding problem, and you might want to consult a doctor. There is such a thing as a bookmark. I don't know if you know that one. Yeah. I don't mean to poke fun, but I please tell us what those tabs are, why you have 2400 open. We all really want to know. Really, really badly. I listen to podcasts or music or video at the same time on one of the screens as well. I just don't want to close down stuff. Maybe I need it. Okay. I would definitely consider like bookmarking them or something. A tab manager that just puts tabs off screen as if they're bookmarks. Like OneTab. OneTab's great. I use that especially for moving essentially a browsing session between computers. 2400 is for research. 1K bookmarks, 71 in OneTab currently. Nice. Well, so for context, I have 5 Firefox windows open. One's just for watching YouTube. There's 5 or 6 tabs there. I've got YouTube and Plex and Nebula as pinned tabs there. I have one for general or various projects like my solar battery, the battery management system, maybe on the fritz, and so I've been looking up alternate options that I can buy. For one, I have one open for the all of the many things that I need for the bed cooler project, like things that I need to buy, guides, information, and stuff that I can refer back to. And then one for all of the parts and stuff for the Audi A3 that that we bought for my wife and that I've been fixing. Most of these can probably go now, to be honest, but yeah, there's probably 20 tabs here or something. So yeah, Chrome's much worse. That's the work one, so that is there's only one window, but there is tab groups for my JLC stuff, the open source testing tools, Home Assistant, research for the response time tool, and then just the things that I use regularly, and my NASs and stuff like that. I think a better metric of memory usage is system memory pressure, because even Linux servers will eat it all up, but it's just reserved until it's actually needed. Okay. I use Firefox or a hum Bing, well, maybe Bing for most at home. You mean Edge? Because Bing's not a browser. Firefox have been making some controversial decisions with how they're pro ads and ad tracking. As someone who's working as digital marketing, I feel sad. They're still better than Chrome. Manifest v3, you know. Yeah. I also love the battery life of Mac. I have a base MacBook Air for general work, and I charge it once a week. That's definitely what you call it? What you call it? A benefit of 1, 2, 3, and soon to be 4. Verse 4 already out. Yes, it's the one that doesn't work. Yeah. There's a great app called Everything. Oh, manager search. It's just called Everything. Voidtools.com. Highly recommend it. It's great. It actually works for searching for stuff. Files, apps, everything. It's great. I'm sure I missed some comments. over like 20 tabs feels like lack of bookmarking. Surely most of them go stale, unless using Pocket to save them or one tab. To some degree, yes, although at least for me, I'm normally referring back to them somewhat regularly if they're active projects. If they're not active projects, then they don't get a Firefox window. Does avoid tools also correct the context menu? Void Tools is the app called Everything that does lets you actually search your file system, which is great. The one that corrects the context menu on Windows 11 is something different. Might be a little late. You missed a question earlier. How do you view results from OSRTC testing? Is coming up with a CSV file, but not sure the best way to open them. When it finishes the test, it should open the heat maps or the results view window, which should give you the heat maps. If it isn't, then one, we need to work that out, and two, just hit the results view button, and then import file for heat maps, the one in the middle, to view the heat maps, or import raw folder for the graph view version. Yeah, it should open automatically at the end of the test, once the test is finished. It might be minimized, maybe. But it came up with a missing something error when it finished. Ah, okay. What does... Can you send me a screenshot or a picture of what that folder... Like, what data is in that folder? Yeah. What files are in that folder? We already talked about Zen 5? We have! Towards the start, actually. Anyone tried to compress Docker images? I don't think so, besides the basic file system compression. I mean, realistically, yeah, Dockers and containers are voodoo. Well, they're basically just little virtual machines, but also not as isolated as you might think, but also, yeah. But I don't think so. Okay. I mean, yeah. I tried updating the Ubiquiti Unify controller. Oh. Well, Joe, if you import open the results viewer and then import the long name one, the one that's the name of the folder, that should be the heat maps. I switched to Unify Controller Reborn. Interesting. What's new about it? We use Edge at work because as an Internet Explorer compatibility system, which is basically just Internet Explorer inside Edge. Yeah. Does anyone know of a way to use a smartphone as a wired QR code hand scanner to connect to a PC? Not that I know of, mostly because when your phone is connected to your PC via USB, it mostly just acts as a storage device. So yeah. Joe, I'll message you. I'm pretty sure it's because one of the numbers failed to process. Unless it did actually work. properly, and that screenshot is just incomplete. But yeah. I think I'm gonna call it there. Joe, feel free to keep messaging me about it. Happy to lend a hand. But yeah, my throat's starting to hurt, and that's a usual hour, so I'm gonna call it there. I hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope you all stay safe and have fun. And yeah, have a good week. I'll catch you tomorrow for a video, Monday for a video, and next week for a stream. Yeah. See you all next week.